tonight we're going to be talking about how to reduce our waste. But I don't know about you, but every single week I go out to the garbage or to the recycling, and there's more there than I want to have. And I'm always saying to myself, how can I reduce this? How can I start making those choices that are going to help me reduce my waste in a variety of ways, from compost to recycling and just general garbage. So we have a commitment at Revel 11 to talk about environmental issues, and we'll be doing that more throughout the year. And we have a wonderful advisor named Monica Huntsberry, who's joining us tonight and introduced us to Bettina. So Monica, go ahead and take it away for this evening. We're so thrilled that you introduced us and brought this topic to us. And I'm excited, very, very excited about this conversation tonight. So go ahead, Monica Huntsberry.
Thanks, Joni, and welcome everyone. I'm glad that you're as excited as we are about this topic. And I want to share that I met Bettina not that long ago in an online chat group for Women in Clean Tech, an organization where she volunteers, and I also attend events because it's a topic that's really passionate to me. And I do think that women will be the change agents for clean tech and our environment. And so the first step of that is always educating ourselves. And I'm super grateful to Revel 11 for being such a great platform and forum for us to have these conversations. Bettina, maybe while I'm introducing you, why don't you go ahead and share your screen so you're ready to get started. Our speaker tonight is Bettina Grab. She's based in San Francisco. And she left her corporate career about 15 years ago to combine her expertise and passion in B2B marketing to help save the planet. She has clients that have a purpose around sustainability, and she has a mission to help them accelerate sales and accelerate their business plans. She is making an impact also as a zero waste speaker, blogger, and activist. And we'll make sure you know where to find Bettina. Tonight's conversation is going to be a very hands-on conversation. We're going to leave time for questions at the end, but certainly if you have questions during, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. So Bettina, it's great to have you here. Welcome. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thank you, Joni and Monica, for having me. And thank you, everyone who has joined tonight and making the time to join our discussion and educate yourself or get some more tips and tricks on how to eliminate trash from your life, because waste is an issue, and that's going to be the topic tonight. But we want to keep it light and proactive and talk about, we call it hacking zero waste. So what are some easy tricks and swaps that you can do to eliminate the amount of trash you take out to your trash can every week? So a little bit about me. Thank you, Monica, for the kind introduction. You might be able to tell from my accent that I'm German originally, but I've lived in the UK for the last 15 years. I'm married to a Brit, and last year I moved to the US, where I founded my business, which is Impact B2B, a marketing agency that works with climate and clean tech startups and companies to help them scale. But my journey into this space has really started with my passion about zero waste. So one day when I was still living in the UK, I was standing in the middle of a supermarket or grocery store, and I was just looking around me, and all I could see was plastic. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I thought to myself, we know what the problem is here with plastic. We know how damaging it is. We've seen the pictures of the turtle with the straw coming out of its nose. And we know that there are giant plastic patches in the oceans, and yet we're not doing anything about it. And everything is still plastic around that. How is this possible? And then I thought to myself, okay, instead of just complaining about why is no one doing anything about this, I need to take action and do something myself. So I started out with the goal of changing our lifestyle and really reducing primarily plastic, but overall reducing trash and simplifying our life. And it was an interesting journey. I'm going to share some of the stuff that I've discovered along the way. And I really enjoyed it. And then people started asking me, hey, you're doing all this zero waste stuff, but isn't that really complicated? And isn't it really expensive to live that kind of lifestyle? And I said, well, yeah, it can be, but it depends. You know, there are certain things you can do. So then that's why I started my blog, which is bluegreen.blog, where I started sharing all the things I've learned and some of the things I'll share with you tonight. I also want to just be open and transparent. You know, I'm just a person and a consumer like you are. I'm not qualified in recycling or waste management or any of those things. It's just things and habits that I've adopted that I think other people might want to look at and maybe adopt for themselves because they work. So before I talk more sort of about my journey, I really wanted to get a sense from our audience tonight. And maybe you could pop in the chat where you see yourself on this journey of zero waste. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 would be that, you know, you're still an absolute beginner, and I guess no one is going to be number 1, but you know, your trash can might look like that. And then 10 is like these zero waste influencers that you see who have just a tiny little can at the end of the month. And I'm nowhere near 10. I'm maybe a 7 or an 8, but I'd just like to get the sense if you want to put it in the chat. And Monica, can you shout out some of what the responses are?
It looks like we have a lot of people who are around the intermediate level, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 1, 9, a few 4s. So I think, you know, everyone is close to that mid intermediate and working toward expert, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
And I really love what you said, Bettina, is that you're a consumer that has a passion. You're not trying to position yourself as an expert. And I think it is such a testament that consumers can make a big difference in this process. So thank you again for sharing your expertise. It looks like most people are at the intermediate level, some trending toward expert.
Awesome. Well, that's so great to hear that everyone has already taken some steps, you know, to move along the ladder. And I'm also really grateful and, you know, curious that we have a number 9 on the call. So maybe you can join in this discussion later and share some of the stuff that you do and the tips that you implement. Okay, so taking a step back, why is it important to talk about zero waste? And sometimes pictures are more important than words. So I'm just going to play this very short video clip, and I hope you can get the audio. Oh, that did not work. No, it's working. Okay, so I don't think I need to play anymore. I mean, we've all seen these kind of pictures, but I think the takeaway here is plastic is everywhere. It's in the environment, it's in our food chain, and it's damaging and it's killing people and animals and the planet. And why is that? Well, plastic, 50% of all plastic that is produced is single-use plastic. And then 7% of all plastic waste in the US, only 7% gets recycled. So out of everything you see around you when you're in the grocery store, only 7% of that will get recycled. And then what's even more shocking, I think, is only 10% of all plastic waste ever produced in the world anywhere has been recycled. So 90% is still out there. It's in landfills and it's in the oceans. And it's not stopping, you know, even though we know all of this, the oil and gas and plastic industry, chemical industry, unfortunately continues to invest. And especially with oil prices going down, like in response to the pandemic, plastic really is their lifeline. So they're investing heavily into new production facilities that are called cracking facilities that make the raw material for plastic. And as a consequence, we're expecting a 40% rise in the production of plastic. And it's not just that the material itself is an issue. It's actually creating a lot of greenhouse gases in the process. So the environmental impact goes beyond the material that is in the environment. But what do we mean about zero waste? And, you know, it's not consuming anything at all, or having that tiny little trash can at the end of the month. It's really an attitude about producing and consuming intentionally, and, you know, considering if there's waste at the end as an end product. And I am German and I like facts, and I thought maybe some of you might do too. So just to go a little bit into detail, that, you know, not all waste is created equal, and some of the reasons why I'm focusing on plastic. So on the left, you see kind of a breakdown of the household waste that US households produce every year and what it's made up of. And then on the right, you see the recycling quotas. So even though paper and paperboard might make up a quarter of everything we produce, it actually has a relatively okay recycling rate, whereas plastic, I've mentioned, is 7 to 8%. And then food, which makes up around 15% of our waste, only has a recycling rate or a compost rate of 6%, which is also really bad, because actually when food breaks down in landfill, it produces methane, which is a climate gas that is 40 to 70 times more damaging than CO2. So, you know, we should take a holistic approach to reducing waste, but I'm focusing mainly on plastic and a little bit on food. And that's because if you look at, you know, the main sources in your household, it's probably one of those three things. It's food packaging, and then it's household goods, so cleaning products, beauty, personal hygiene. And then it's what I call, you know, all other stuff. And there's also a lot of stuff. And if you're on your journey, one thing I would really recommend you do is do a trash audit of your home. And there's some simple and fun ways you can do that. You can either just take your phone and take a picture every time you throw something in the trash, or you can have a little notepad next to your trash and just record what you're throwing away. Or when you take it out, you might want to sort through it at the end, although that could be a little bit disgusting. So up to you. But if you do this exercise, maybe just for a week, it will give you a really good sense of the sources of trash that are entering your life. And what does the saying go like? You can't manage what you can't measure. So it will give you a really good sense on where to start tackling this. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. I can already hear a lot of you thinking, well, you know, this was all nice and good, and I was on a good way on my journey, but then COVID happened, and now we're in the middle of a pandemic. And, you know, grocery stores have stopped doing the bulk food sections where you can bring your own containers, and they banned plastic, they banned you from bringing your own bags at some stage. So are there things we can still do? And I think, yes, we can. So first of all, the impact of the pandemic is really shocking. And I'm sure it's no surprise to you if you look around yourself when you go for a walk and there's discarded masks everywhere. And, you know, everyone is going really mental on the plastic packaging under the guise of being protective. So experts are saying probably plastic packaging has risen 250 to 300% as a result of the pandemic. And that is even though over 115 health experts from 18 countries put out a statement, I think this was in early June, to say, you know, based on the best available science and guidance from public health experts, it is clear that reusable systems are safe to be used if they are, you know, if you follow basic hygiene practices. So I think it's clear I already mentioned the plastic and oil and gas lobby, that someone really capitalized on the opportunity. And I think us as consumers, we can be educated and put a halt to this. So on my blog, I've put together some tips, things that you can still do during a pandemic. So most, at least in California, most grocery stores now accept you bringing your reusable shopping bags back in again. I'm not sure what it's like in Washington, where most of you are based. Try and continue to buy unpackaged fruit and vegetables, go to a farmer's market. There are online zero waste shops. These two listed here are based in the Bay Area, but if you go above a certain ordering amount, then they will post it as well beyond the Bay Area. If you still, if there, and there will be food that will come in plastic packaging in the absence of any bulk sections, try and buy as big a package as you can without risking to produce any food waste. So if you buy non-perishable items, try and really hunt for the biggest package. Obviously, wear a reusable mask. You can use soap and shampoo bars instead of buying that in plastic bottles. You could, share, swap, and barter with your community. I found that the zero waste community is an amazing community. Everyone is super helpful, always willing to share tips. If you find those kind of people who are like-minded, you could start a bulk buying club. So that will help you to buy even bigger packaging and then just divvy it out. It will also be cheaper. If you still have more time on your hands because you're no longer commuting, you could use that spare time to make your own food. So there are some things that are really easy to make, like yogurt is one of the things I discovered. I don't understand how the milk lobby was able to convince everyone that you have to buy yogurts in plastic pots because, I think our forefathers have always made their own yogurt and some cultures still do every day. And if you haven't checked it out, Google it. It's literally the easiest thing to do and it's amazing and it's cheap and it's tasty and you don't get any nasties. I know here on Revel 11, we've had quite a few webinars on pickling and fermenting. So that's a big trend, which will help with avoiding food waste. And then also in your home, you can make your own cleaning products, for example. And then the gardeners amongst us, obviously, you can grow your own vegetables and things that you might be growing already, but also things like loofahs, which is a sponge that you can dry and then it becomes your washing up sponge. Monica, I can see kind of things popping up in the chat. I don't know whether there's any questions you want to.
Sure. So people like the audit worksheet. I think that's a great idea. And Bettina, I think when you're a little bit closer to your computer, I can hear your audio better too, just as a side note.
Okay.
And then here's a great question from Lori. What to do about plastic bags for vegetables at the store? Can they bring their own bags along with the shopping bag? And also she has been washing the saran wrap that she uses at home in order to continue to reuse it.
Yeah. So reusing any plastic packaging if you can is great. So, sometimes I do buy like mascarpone or mozzarella that comes in a plastic pot, but I keep the pot and then I use that pot for freezing. My husband thinks I'm mad sometimes with the amount of plastic pots that I'm collecting. And I think with fruit and veg, do you just ask yourself, do you really need the bag in the first place? Or could you just go for loose products and then just wash them? So, some are perishable like berries, I get it. But sometimes I also think like, why do you have to put carrots or cucumbers into a plastic bag? That's probably not what you're referring to, but.
No, I think that was the question. What about brown bags? Are they better than plastic bags if you bring brown bags or use the brown bags at the store for the vegetables?
By brown bags, do you mean?
The brown paper bags.
Yeah. No, that's definitely better than plastic. You can reuse that, or you can, if it's dirty, you can put it in the compost if you have compost, or you can put it into paper and paper recycling, which at least has a higher likelihood of getting recycled than the plastic.
And someone else, Ali, suggested to try beeswrap instead of saran wrap. You want to chat about that at all?
Yes, great suggestion. Thank you. Yes, beeswax are a great thing. Beeswax wraps, if you haven't come across them, Google them. They are basically fabric which is lined with beeswax. So you can mold it with just the heat in your hands and it'll cling to glass or whatever pots. And, you wash it in sort of lukewarm water and it's fine. It's a great, and there's a lot of people who make them themselves. You can usually buy them at farmers markets or on Etsy, but you can also get them, I think, at Whole Foods, for example. Thank you for those comments. Is the audio better? I'm holding the thing.
Yep, it is. And then Ali also said if you're vegan, they have ones without beeswax as well.
Good point. Yes.
Frida said you can bring boxes back to the farmers markets or transfer into your own bags.
Yes. Most people will accept that. I've had some look at me funny because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally touched the bag for 2 seconds for decanting the fruit into my own bags, and I'm giving it back to you. So sometimes you can also be reasonable with people and just push back a little.
And what I've done now at the stores that won't let me bring in my own shopping bags, I just have them put everything in the cart, which is a pain because then I go into my car and I put them in bags, but it's still, it just takes an extra few minutes. You can always, I think that what you're sharing here is you can always find ways to be creative. And there's a lot of questions about recording, and yes, and I think Bettina, you're also sharing this presentation afterwards, so everybody who registered will get an email copy of this presentation. Lots of good tips here. Feel free to continue.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Great suggestions from the audience. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'm not a vegan. I'm vegetarian, but not a vegan, so I missed the bees thing. So thanks for flagging that. So then, looking at food waste as one of the sources, there are some tips on my blog about how you can really plan your meals and your shopping list. And, with this being, I guess, 90% women on the call, I'm sure most of you do this anyway. But there are just 2 approaches that I find have worked for us really well. One is you start, you shop your pantry first. You look at what you have at home and go through your freezer. And then, there are even some apps that let you put in the stuff that you have at home, and then it comes up with some recipe suggestions. And then you can, I would also always recommend cooking twice or even 3 or 4 times the amount and then freezing it. And that way you have, some nice lunches prepared. And I have a shopping list template for that approach on my blog. And then another system which was made popular by Bea Johnson, who's one of the sort of zero waste gurus. She has this kind of cook once, prepare 7 times logic. And the idea is that on the day you have time, it could be the weekend or any other time, you cook 1 large dish at the beginning of your shopping week. And if you're an omnivore, that could be meat based, and then that provides you the meat for the rest of the week, or it could be a large vegetarian dish. And then you use the leftover bits for the remainder of the week and just plan your meals around the leftovers. And then you can just supplement that with seasonal veg. And again, consider cooking double the things. I'm sure you have some other tips or ways you approach this sort of meal planning and making your shopping list. So, feel free to chip in later in the discussion.
And Bettina, we are getting some comments about that. And, it's so interesting because I really, when I think about zero waste, I do think about minimizing plastic or plastic bags, but I don't really think about meal planning and food waste as much. And you're getting a lot of people chiming in about how much menu planning and meal planning has saved both on food waste and time, especially during COVID. So I think that's a great, easy one to incorporate.
Yeah, and you get into the habit, as you plan your meal, you kind of already know what you can get with a low waste impact. So you plan your meals around that. So I like, if I see a recipe and it has an ingredient in it that I know that I can't get zero waste, then I'm like, meh, I might skip on that, or maybe try and find a replacement for that ingredient. So that's how I think about my meals. I plan them around the ingredients that I know I can get with the least amount of waste.
Right. I mean, and Frida commented that she makes delicious soup from stems of kale and chili from sad vegetables. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think there's a real trend now, around foraging, fermenting, and being really creative, things that we would have thrown out in the past, you know, like the leaves of the radishes or the leaves of the celery. There's, you know, you can make pesto from that, or you can dry the leaves from the celery and turn it into celery salt. And there's entire blogs just dedicated to that, you know, what do you do with the leftover bits? And there's even, I think I have a book about zero waste cooking, and it's all about this. It's making potato crisps from potato peels and all those kind of things, or making cakes. So yeah, tons of inspiration out there on the internet. So a great place to start. Thank you for those comments. So I talked about how I think about things that I can get sort of waste free, and these are just some swaps and tricks that I've adopted. With the milk, we're really lucky here in California that we can get the Strauss milk in returnable glass bottles. I Googled, I'm not sure if you can get them in the Pacific Northwest. You can, okay, that's amazing. Otherwise, I also just found a website, which is, I think, it's actually called buymilkinbottles.com. I've linked it at the back of my presentation. It's a resource for wherever you are, you can find a milk delivery service. So that's awesome. Yogurt I've mentioned, you know, cheese. At the moment, not as easy. I used to bring my container to the cheese counter and ask them to put the cheese in. Bread, either support your local bakery who might just put it in the paper bag, or I'm a big German bread fan, so I make my own sourdough bread, but I appreciate that takes time. So I mean, cereals is one of those areas that I can't get my husband to budge on. He just loves his cornflakes. So that's one of the main sources of trash in our household. But like I've shifted to muesli or porridge, or what do you call it here? Oatmeal that I make myself. And, you know, beans or other kind of pulses, think about whether you could get the raw pulses and then just get larger amounts and they last forever. And that way you don't have to buy cans. Okay, so moving on from sort of the whole food and grocery area to household trash. So there's kind of three approaches to that. I think the first one that people sometimes overlook is to really simplify. And I think a lot of the things we have in our household are maybe a result of the, you know, the cosmetics marketing industry doing a really good job at convincing us that we need 17 different, I don't know, lotions and potions. Whereas really, you know, once you found one that works on everything, that's the one you use. And then that really simplifies your bathroom cabinet and it saves you time. Same with soap, you know, you can use the soap to wash your hands, to wash your body, even wash your hair if you find a good one. Cleaning product, vinegar is really your friend. It does everything. And that moves me on to DIY. So a lot of the products you can make yourself. A cleaning solution is really, vinegar is all you need. Kitchen towels, you can cut up some old fabric bits, and the same for face wipes. And then there's some eco-friendly alternatives. I think I've mentioned the loofah washing up sponge. There's bamboo toothbrushes that compost. Sorry, my Zoom thing is on top of my list. Yeah, as women, you know, for your period, you can switch to menstrual cups or reusable pads, which are really a game changer. If you haven't tried them, I can recommend menstrual cups. Okay. And then sort of the third bucket, which was our kind of random other bucket. Again, I think it starts with your approach to what you actually need to buy. And if you've dealt with zero waste and you've looked into the movement, you will be very familiar with the 5 or 6 R's. You know, it starts with really refusing, so not letting anything enter your household. If you can't do that, then really reduce and think about what you really need. Try and reuse as much as you can and repair as much as you can and refill. And then if you don't need it anymore, share it or swap it or donate it. Buying secondhand is a big thing for me. If you think about it, I don't think there's anything in the world that you might need that doesn't already exist, that someone already owns but might not need it, and it sits somewhere in their closet and it's hardly ever been used. So wait till the next slide and I show you what I mean. But yeah, you know, if you buy if you really want to buy something new, and there are things that we buy new, for example, bed linen, when we moved to the US, you know, that was one thing that we didn't want to buy secondhand, but I really then did the research, you know, what is it made of, how, where, by whom, how does it impact the people that are producing these goods, and are you paying a fair price for it? A lot of the times when we buy stuff that seems cheap to us, it's because someone else is paying the price and not us. And I'm sure you are all aware of this. You know, is it good quality and can it last? Can it be repaired? Can you repair it, or do you at least know someone who could repair it? If it's non-repairable, is there at least a way to dispose of it responsibly? You know, is there recycling in place, or could you buy an eco-friendly alternative? And then finally, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, just, you know, where you buy it from. A friend of mine told me, you know, she'd done a lot of research about, I can't remember what it was, a sort of zero waste product. And then she bought it from Amazon. And then because it came from their warehouse, it came in really like unsustainable packaging. And then she looked again, and she actually looked up the producer or the brand and bought directly from them. And she got it at the same price, but they then really cared about the packaging, and she received it in absolutely responsible and zero waste packaging. So that was just a final thought on that.
Bettina, I think you're bringing up some really interesting points. I know Revel 11 is sponsoring an event at the end of this month about sustainable fashion, and there's a lot of conversation going on about that. I recently watched the movie Greed, which talked about fast fashion and the price that we're paying. And I don't know about many of you, but really the pandemic has changed my relationship with consuming, how much I think I need to buy, what I think I need to buy new. And this year, for the first time over the holidays, I gave everybody, including my children, they each got one new gift and one to five recycled gifts. I really pulled from the closet for recycled. And I think everyone loved the recycled gifts they got. And it felt so good to give away something I already had without feeling like, you know, how weird is that? I think it's really becoming acceptable. And I think my kids especially appreciated it. So that's a tip I would offer. And even now for birthdays, I'm giving recyclable gifts and saying, I've chose to recycle this. Here's why I thought of you, with a handwritten note.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And I think people appreciate, because they're not, you know, they're just not getting a thing. They're getting the story of the thing, which is probably worth more to them than the actual thing. The other thing when it comes to gift giving is obviously to think about experiences and time, you know, instead of things. So that's another really nice thing to do. So yeah, talking about secondhand, this was a snapshot of our apartment shortly after we moved in. It looks slightly different now, but we didn't bring any of our furniture from the UK. We left everything there and gave it away or rented it out. So everything you see in this picture is secondhand. You know, everyone's taste is different, but I like it. So it just goes to show that, and obviously we'd saved a ton of money by not buying anything new. So it does work. It might require a little bit more time and research, but also you're meeting a really great community. I got a lot of these things through like Facebook, Marketplace, or Nextdoor, and it's also a chance to meet your neighbors or people in your community. So I can really recommend it. So, which leads me on to the benefits. So if you continue your journey or decide tonight maybe to embark on this journey, I can promise you that you will really reap the benefits. You know, you will be healthier because less processed food and less chemicals are entering your life. You'll have a simplified life because you'll have less stuff that you need to care for. You'll learn new skills like planning, cooking, canning, pickling, fermenting, whatever it is. And you'll meet your community, as I just mentioned. So your neighbors, like-minded people, swappers. I think also I'm linking, there's a Facebook group called Zero Waste California, but they're really open, you know, they're not just California based. and there's a website, zerowastecalifornia.org, which has a list of all like bulk shopping options all across the US, not just California. So, I can really encourage it. And then finally, what can you do, beyond your own home? Start with your home, because that's a good place to start. But then if you feel compelled, like me, to go further and take action, if you're employed, and even if you're working from home, you do have influence on your employer. So raise this issue with your senior management. If you ever return back to the office, really lobby for sustainable alternatives in the office. Refuse any free stuff you're getting. Use your voice to lobby. If you get volunteer days, put those towards, sort of a with charities that are in that space. And then at home, sort of beyond your home, yes, you can't do everything at the same time, but start small, choose one thing, and then scale up. Lead by example, vote with your feet, start the conversation, spread the word, keep nagging like I do with my husband about his cereals, and then get others involved, have an impact on your community. I think people underestimate the impact they can have. I met someone through a work networking thing online, and I just told him the story about how my zero waste journey started when I was standing in the middle of a grocery store and saw all this plastic around me. And he said, oh, wow, yeah, I can really empathize with that. And then 2 weeks later, I got an email from him saying, hey, you've really inspired me. And I've now started an initiative within my neighborhood where I'm collecting the plastic bags and the plastic foil wrapping from people's houses. And then I take that to a dedicated recycling site so that I can at least make a difference and get a little bit more of the plastic recycled. And I think in his first week from his neighbors, he collected like 10 trash bags full of plastic wrapping. And I thought that was amazing. What a great initiative to take. And then he's probably inspiring his neighbors by just bringing that to their attention. So maybe next time he'll only get 8 bags of plastic wrapping. So it has a ripple effect. And this is the ripple effect I wanted to share with you. So let's hope this video works. Oh, I don't know why it does. Try again.
Now, do you remember when I said you had to do this perfectly? How about I leave you with just one switch? It's something we all drink and a change we can all make. Milk. So, I want you to picture this. The average family of 4's yearly consumption of milk. Got it? Actually, don't picture it. Here it is.
So I think what she's carrying on to say is, what if this family swapped back to the milkman or to reusable milk bottles? There you can really see the impact. And lovely Scottish accent there, nothing I can compete with, unfortunately. So I hope you enjoyed that little clip. So in that sense, I just wanted to leave you with that, with Newton's first law of motion. An object either remains at rest or continues to move at a constant velocity unless acted upon by a force. So I'd really love us all to be that force that continues to move with velocity and create a zero waste movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Bettina. That was wonderful. You shared so many great tips and practical ones and information. Let's go to the chat. And also, if somebody wants to ask Bettina a direct question, feel free to take yourself off mute. Lori asked what to do about recyclable plastics with the little triangle on the bottom.
Yeah. So I think when I told you that only 7% of recycling gets recycled, of plastic waste gets recycled, the little triangle doesn't actually mean it gets recycled. It just gives the producer and the recycler a code for what is contained within that packaging. And it was actually invented by the plastics and oil and gas industry when they came up with the concept of recycling, and they insisted on putting this little loop symbol so that consumers would get the impression that this gets recycled. But the symbol doesn't mean anything. It's just a code for the material. And what gets recycled or not ultimately depends on the local recycling contract that's in place with your city or where you live, and the contractual agreements they have with your city. And then, without going, there's some really great documentaries, which I've linked on my blog to watch, and the link is on the slides that you will get. I really recommend you watch one of these, for example, War on Plastic. It's called, I don't know, it was done by NPR and PBS. But it really, tells the story about how this whole thing has come about. And the thing with plastic recycling is it's just not economically viable at the moment. What happened in the past is that a lot of the plastic waste that was deemed or ready for recycling actually got shipped to Asia. And the majority of it got shipped to China. And China took it, and they were able, they used it for whatever they used it for, but the quality was constantly degrading, and whatever they were getting from Europe and from North America was so contaminated that they basically put a halt to it and said, we can't deal with all this trash. And since then, recycling companies have tried to find alternative companies or organizations or countries to take it off. And most of it has gone to other countries in Asia that have even less of an infrastructure and technologies to recycle the plastic than China. So what happens, unfortunately, a lot of the time is it just gets, someone will take it, but then that's where the chain ends. Then no one really knows what happens to it. A lot of the time it just gets burned in open fires, what washes away into water streams, and that's then how it ends up in the ocean. So I think most of it you've ever believed about recycling is not true. And that's why only 7% of recycling ever gets recycled, because out of the, I don't know, I think it's 9 numbers that are in those little symbols, there's only 2 or 3 out of those 9 that are kind of easily recyclable and that actually hold a value for a recycler in this country. So like, milk bottles or soda bottles, they might have a higher chance of being recycled, but most plastic pots, for example, or like the shells that you get with your takeout meals or any wrapper, it's not going to get recycled. It's going to end up in landfill.
Yeah, that's tough facts, and I agree about your messaging on plastics and revisiting when we use them. Somebody wrote about PCC is working to make their deli plastics all compostable. Somebody asked if the wax box milk cartons are better than plastic ones.
Yeah, so now we're getting into the details. And again, I'm not an expert, on this, on recycling as such.
Could I interject?
Yeah, please.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Candace. I'm in Seattle, and I actually work as a recycling educator.
Perfect.
I was working for a company called Resource Stewards, and now I recently got hired on at Resource Synergy, which is out of Wenatchee or Spokane. And so as you were saying, I agree with everything you said about how it really depends on your municipality. And so in Seattle, because I know we have a bunch of Seattle people, they actually do recycle the plastic. But it's important to remember or to know, because I don't think they really advertise it, is that like they recycle it based on the shape in plastics. So bottles, tubs, and cups are, I think that's what it is. So like a large yogurt container. And it really depends on the municipality, because in Auburn and Federal Way, you can't do cups. And, so you really have to look at your program, your individual program, determine what is going to be recycled. And about the waste that was going to China, the biggest problem with that, and the reason why we haven't found a new good resource for taking the plastic, is that people were not cleaning them out properly. So it would get to China and it would be full of mold, and they'd be like, we don't want this, so they started rejecting all of our plastics because it was just disgusting and contaminated. So that's a very important step of recycling, is you have to clean it out. You can't, if it's shampoo, not a big deal. It's not going to grow mold. But if it's food, you can't have any food in there at all. And no, it really shouldn't be wet either. Nothing can be, even paper, once it's wet, it can't be recycled. Cardboard. So you have to make sure your recycling bin is closed at all times. There's so many details, but the reason it's by shape is because of the machinery. It's it's all automated to recognize the machine. People aren't looking at your trash. If you put your trash or your recycling in the recycle bin in a container, it's not going to get recycled. You have to pour it out loose. This is Seattle, and I know it's different for everyone, but most of the time it's automated, and the machines look at the items and they say it's flat, it's paper, it's a bottle, it's a cup. And so if you flatten your bottles, then it won't recognize it, and it's going to go in with the paper. So it's really important that you don't smash down your milk cartons, or not milk cartons, but milk jugs. The gallon milk jugs, you can't smash them. Anyway, I just wanted to interject, because you're right. It depends on your municipality. You really have to understand that. And if you put stuff in there that's not recyclable, or that's dirty, or any of that, it's going to get rejected. It's going to go and end up in the landfill anyway. So you have to do it properly. You can't do it all willy-nilly. If you put them in a bag in the recycling bin, and they'll just, the machinery looks at that and it says, oh, it's bag of trash. And it gets rejected off to the side and into the trash, into the landfill. So all that effort is for naught. So I just wanted to interject that.
I'm so glad you interjected and spoke up, Candace. Thank you so much. Are there other online resources for people in the Seattle area that you would recommend?
Well, they definitely can look at the Seattle Public Utilities website. And then in Auburn, it's waste management. It depends on where you are. It really is individual. So I've been working in Auburn, Federal Way, and Seattle, and now I'll be doing a lot of other things. But and they're all different. There's little nuances in what it can be taken and what cannot. And so you really have to understand, if you want to be a good consumer or thrower awayer or whatever, it's like the end of the cycle. And there's a lot of movement to correct the packaging errors, because that's a huge problem. The manufacturers should not be sending all this junk to us, all this trash, all this extra stuff. And so there's been, I don't know specifically, but I know there have been some bills introduced to make the manufacturer responsible for the disposal or the recycling, or just how do we get rid of it? How do we get out of our house? You sent it to me. I didn't want all this. I wanted that product.
Yeah,
so
really good point.
Somebody asked the question if we can put pressure on waste companies to recycle more. Are there movements or avenues around that? Is anyone aware of?
It's really finding the person who's going to pay them for the product. So that's why China was perfect, because it was mostly China. I think it was other places as well, but mostly China is what I heard. And it was working great. And then all of a sudden they rejected again because of mold, basically. They don't want that nastiness. They just want the plastic. And we were failing. And I'm sure there was some other political stuff involved.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think one other thing to remember is, when you're first starting out, or if you're wanting to do change, sometimes it can be overwhelming. So even just taking one tip from tonight, just even
Yes.
one, and saying, I'm going to start to just master this. And then you add another one, and then you add another one, right? That's how you build a habit. So as we close, I'm wondering if people will put in the chat an accountability to themselves and each other, and put one thing you either learned tonight or that you're committed to changing as a result of this. And let's start to create our own ripple about the work we can do to make a difference in the environment. Thank you so much, Bettina. You were awesome. And I know you have busy, long days, and I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks everyone who joined tonight. And I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, Candace, for chipping in there from a recycling perspective.
I'm gonna say goodbye. I feel silly being the only other person with a video.
No, don't. You were so great.
Not
Thank
at
you
all.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hi. You weren't moving. Okay. All right. I see other
Thanks,
people now.
Candace, so much. So one of the things that I've done personally is that, and I'm not perfect by any means, but if I have a choice on whether to buy plastic or glass, I'll go glass, because I know glass is recycled more than plastic is. So just even that small switch is an important start. And there's so many more things that we can all do. So we really appreciate, Candace, you sharing, and Bettina, that was just excellent. So many fabulous tips in there that I'm going to continue on. And I love what Monica said about having the ripple effect. So please share tonight.